What if I told you that Bitcoin's boom right now is born not just out of a burgeoning tech, and let's be honest, I mean, Bitcoin is quite possibly one of the future rails of finance and innovation. But what if I said it wasn't just born out of technology, but actually out of a political divination by America's overlord, the commander-in-chief, the Bitcoiner and hodler-in-chief, Donald Trump? Because if we're completely honest with ourselves and we analyze these asset markets from a place of logic and liquidity, we would have to undoubtedly admit to ourselves that one of the major drivers of Bitcoin's price right now is Donald Trump. Donald Trump, grifter in chief, the commander in chief, who is more corrupt than any other president that I can actually think of, bar Nixon. And I'm going to use that word flippantly. Not flippantly, actually. I'm going to use that word quite accurately. I think Donald Trump is grafting it big time in the administration of the United States. And I mean, whether or not you believe with that and the political ideology or your leanings, you can't deny that the man himself has his hands in a lot of pies. And maybe that's okay. I mean, maybe that's capitalism par excellence. Maybe that's the maneuver du jour. Who knows? But I think if we're going to be thinking about holding assets, crypto, financial assets, equities and positions of that like and that ilk, then we have to be honest with ourselves about where the liquidity is coming from. What's driving the asset prices? Is it just an organic realization that, hey, Bitcoin's the future, the debasement trade is on? I mean, these are both sensible things to think about. But we can't deny that in the White House right now, we have quite possibly the most catalytic proponent of this asset price and this asset class possible. He's openly touting Bitcoin. He's openly used it as a campaign tool and a policy. And he's promised to buy, hand over fist, huge amounts of them for this fictitious and fallacious reserve currency. But if we're going to think about Bitcoin's future, the telemetry, its trajectory, we have to think about it in terms of Donald Trump. And that's crazy to think about it, because Bitcoin, when I was getting into it back in the early days, and I am a huge believer in Bitcoin, by the way, and digital assets in general. But when I was getting back into it, and I'm sure a lot of you, the sum total of 3 of you who might watch this video were getting into it back in the day, you were probably thinking, hey, Bitcoin, deregulated, decentralized, stick it to the man. Hey, we don't have to worry about this fiat system. But now, no. Like the head honcho, the capo di capo of capitalistic societies, America is actually the key advocate for it. So the waters are a bit more muddied. So if we're thinking about where Bitcoin is going to be in the future, we need to think about the pathway that are being set now. And you have to ask yourself one key question. If Donald Trump is no longer president, what happens to the price of Bitcoin? If Donald Trump no longer is in the White House and you don't have a crypto-friendly president or administration, what happens to the price of digital assets and crypto in general? Because you have to be completely open and honest with yourself. Hey, look, I'm a true believer in Bitcoin. I love this space. I love crypto assets. I'm all about the graft if it comes to filling my bags. I'm not on this moralistic high ground. I'm going to ride the wave of the president or the incumbent or the prospective president or the next in line who is going to be the best for my portfolio, for my family's future, and for my own financial well-being. I'm going to be that guy. I'm not here on a bandwagon or on a crusade. But we have to agree that part of the price calculus of Bitcoin and digital assets and more traditional assets from TradFi is derived from the fact that we've got a very market-friendly president. So once that guy is gone, what happens to our assets, guys? What happens to the bag? What's going to actually happen to it? That's what you need to ask yourself. So let's think about it in key ways. So number one, crypto is definitely riding the Trump wave. There's no two ways about it. He got elected on a policy that was in no small part derived from crypto bros and people distrusting the fiat system, thinking that a billionaire was going to do good for us rather than just enrich himself, ingratiate himself with the inner circles and the inner sanctums, and institutionalize his own bag holding and make it even more easy for him to commit graft. But we have to agree that crypto is basically a derivative trade on the precociousness and the mercuriality and the I don't know what to call it, but the mercurial nature of Donald Trump, we have to agree that if it weren't for a crypto-friendly bastion of capitalism, America, biggest economy on every single metric, if they weren't getting behind it, if the regulation from the SEC wasn't being ameliorated, if crypto banking wasn't becoming legitimized, and is legitimized, if it wasn't becoming ingrained, if the bloody Trump sons and sons-in-laws and daughters-in-laws and cronies weren't involved deeply in crypto companies, would we be where we are now? So the first thing you have to admit is that it's anchored to key political and economic events right now. Donald Trump tweets and the world catches the flu. Donald Trump truths and the world catches veracity or mendacity, no matter how, irrespective, I don't know, depending on how you view Donald Trump, you know. But crypto is riding the Donald Trump wave right now. And is the surf going to evaporate before us? Is the tide going to barrel over? I don't know if that's the correct surfing terminology. In the chat, tell me. Is it going to go away? Is the tide going to go out and everyone's going to see who's swimming naked once his presidency comes to an end? Because in no small part, crypto's valuations right now are derived from the fact that we're pricing in, we're discounting into the future that shit's good for Bitcoin if Trump's in power. So it's only prudent to ask yourself, what happens after it? Do we have a JD Vance that continues, carries over the baton? Do we have someone else that doesn't agree with it? Do we have a democratic elected administration that says, we might like Bitcoin, but just to screw over Donald Trump and the last 4 years and to have everything antithetical and to campaign on the complete oppositional, diametric oppositional stance of Donald Trump, we are going to get rid of all of this crypto-friendly legislation. Is that what happens? Is that what we foresee in 4 years? We have to be thinking into the future about it, because point number 2, the US government sets the rules at the moment, and they're setting the rules at the moment. It's a Republican government. But what's going to happen if a Democratic government becomes elected? What's going to happen if they're not so friendly? Because right now, no matter how much you hate America, the military-industrial complex, what they're doing in bloody Venezuela, how they're going around kicking down doors, kicking butts and taking names on Chuck Norris flex, you have to admit, the US government sets the bloody rules. They said it. The liquidity comes from there, capital goes where it's treated best, and Labour goes to where it's treated, where it's cheapest, right? And it's the same with the US government. They write the rules. Whatever they do, the other institutions are too scared to be sanctioned into oblivion to ignore it. Not to mention the liquidity flows and the capital flows that make being in America, following American policy, following the Fed, fiscal, monetary, political policies, inevitable. It's inevitable. They make the rules. They are the biggest player. So you have to admit that they are the biggest ones right now. So when we're talking about Bitcoin or crypto versus regulatory clarity, we have to think that like the clearer and more friendly the rules look, the stronger the Bitcoin uptrend is going to be. How confident am I in the future of Bitcoin? I have to correlate that and relate that to how confident I am to the future regulatory environment being ebullient, being friendly for me, right? So that's another thing we have to consider, because if the regulatory environment is at odds with my portfolio, I'm getting out of that asset class. No matter how much I think, oh, Bitcoin is the future, Bitcoin is going to save us all, crypto assets are the future. Yeah, okay. Well, ride 80% down in that future dream. Hold it when it's 95% down and still believe in your dream. And has it turned into a nightmare yet? Has it turned into a garish, ghoulish, unfathomable void of melancholy and depression? Of course it has. So as much as you are a die-hard advocate of the tech, you have to combine that with reality that you're not going to be holding it forever if the regulatory environment becomes less friendly. And another key point is that at the moment, what is another variable holding up Bitcoin prices? Well, it's that banking access and market liquidity has become way more friendly. It's become way more conducive to the asset prices going up. I mean, before Donald Trump, there were tentative overtures into crypto. The prelude was that, we're going to analyze it. But let's be honest, Gary Gensler was literally villain number one. He was the nemesis in terms of making Bitcoin great again, right? Making crypto bankable. But now we have bank and cryptos in this unholy conflagration between each other. In fact, Donald Trump and his sons are like whispered and rumored to be investing or opening up certain banks in the United States that deal and make their dealings in crypto, even more easily accessible. Because the banks' doors are open, right, for crypto now. If you look at like cannabis stocks, it's clear, it's like on a federal basis, it's still quite unbankable, which is why the cannabis stocks are in the doldrums, right? Just have a look at, CGC or VFF, and you can see that like not being able to be banked is a huge regulatory overhead, understandably. And banks are open for business. Banks are open for crypto business, pension funds, ETFs, private equity, private credit. There's so many funds that are related to getting you in crypto because the banks don't care about Bitcoin being a viable asset. They only care about the flows, baby. They only care about the liquidity and the order books and the bid-ask spread that they can charge their customers for saying, hey, yeah, let's get into crypto, man. Crypto's the future. We hated it before. We thought it was the Antichrist before, but now we can make money with it. Hey, the doors are open. The liquidity is back. It matters. Now, it would be remiss of us to actually think that sentiment wasn't a huge driver of this Bitcoin price. And that's why I feel, although I'm an advocate, don't kill me in the chat, I'm an advocate of Bitcoin, I believe in its future, I believe in crypto's future, a selected few, not all of these shitcoins that all of you are investing in. Sort yourself out. Sort yourself out, because those crypto shitcoins are going to be the ruin of you, honestly. As bull markets mature, people always go further out onto the risk curve and they start buying absolute dog shit. You're all invested in AAA, all of a sudden you're in triple B, and the next day you're in Argentinian bonds. Okay, say what you will about Miller, yeah, he could be a great guy in terms of like economic genius and ability, but it's still Argentinian bonds, right? And let's not go over. I'm getting distracted, I digress. What we need to be thinking about is sentiment in terms of Bitcoin. If we use sentiment as a proxy, we could definitely deduce that sentiment is driving the Bitcoin price right now, as well as liquidity flows and as well as the movement of capital, institutionalization of Bitcoin, the banking, and also the commander-in-chief being behind it. But when the mood turns negative for Bitcoin, we've seen it. These markets climb up stairs after stairs. Building it is like building your body, right? It's hard, it's arduous. But hey, in 2 weeks, if I eat nothing but soda and chips and fried chicken, I'm going to fall down that cliff, man. That's what's going to happen with Bitcoin. Right now, we've got positive news flow. We've got ample liquidity. We've got a president that some of the people still love, but definitely he was still driving flow. Because when that sentiment fades, the volatility is going to hit, and Bitcoin is a huge vol asset, and it's going to come tumbling down. So we've got crypto riding the wave of Trump. We've got the United States being the only game in town. We've got the liquidity opening up in banks. We've got it all being about vibes, tweets, and headlines. Every single tweet can move Ether, can move Bitcoin, can move Solana like 10, 20%. Dude, that's insane. With one man having all of that power to move markets. And let's be honest, to position himself and his family in a propitious and auspicious fashion in order to benefit from those moves. It's another card being built upon a shaky foundation. If you are watching the show, if you're watching the game and you're predicting what's happening, you would be taking bets right now that something is going to happen. That's amiss. That's bad. You have to be aware of it, because when you have such a man who is so mercurial and volatile as the the commander-in-chief, you have to combine that understanding and that knowledge with, hey, my asset is tightly correlated and linked to how this man feels when he wakes up in the bloody morning. That's a sentiment asset. If I've ever seen one, it's a sentiment asset. So we just have to be aware of that, right? Because as the Bitcoin narrative grows and thoroughly gets disappointed or elongated and pushed out into the future, never to be met with fruition or greeted with alacrity once again, you have to actually think. If the story of the Bitcoin narrative dies, what happens to my asset, bro? When the governments are buying Bitcoin, I'm a buyer at any price. When the government is banning Bitcoin, I'm a seller at any price. If the story is so far in line with the building this reserve, which I actually personally don't believe there is the political will or impetus to do. But if it is the story, if the narrative is there, you want to be a buyer of Bitcoin because you want to be trading and buying where the puck is going, not where it is right now. The real money is made on the story going from page 13 to page 1. Not the story being on page 1 already, you trying to get positioned for it. There's no alpha in that. By definition, to be different, you have to be doing something else. You can't be using all of the same indicators. You can't be applying all of the same risk metrics. By definition, being different requires you to take risk out on another word, or to have another alpha, or to have another, I don't know, inside information. But I don't know about you, you might be that guy, but I'm not privy to that kind of stuff. Because if the story dies for the Bitcoin reserve, that takes out a huge player in the market. It's like Michael Saylor waking up tomorrow and selling all of these bags. I'm telling you right now, it's not going to be a good thing for the market, right? Now, what about if the economy changes with the change of the president? That could be a huge thing. And that's where I'm going to end the video, to be honest with you. Because that is the major headwind, right? God forbid something happens to Donald Trump. I wish no ill on no man, right? Enemy or not. God forbid something happens to him. What happens to asset prices? Because I'm telling you right now, this president's fate, sentiment, predisposition, senility, dementia, addled mind, wherever it is so linked to asset markets right now that something happening to him, or him being replaced, him not being replaced by a like-minded individual, is going to do real damage to the market in a way that never. Look, Kennedy, God rest his soul, got assassinated. The market was down for maybe one day. If Trump leaves office and he's not replaced with a crypto-friendly or market-friendly president, we are in for a world of unfathomable pain. That's how closely related Trump is to markets in terms of Federal Reserve independence, in terms of crypto intervention, in terms of loose monetary policy, in terms of Stephanie's foot on the accelerator for lower rates. It's so embedded, not to mention tariffs, not to mention fiscal expansionaryism or fiscal dominance, not to mention bellicosity around the world and jingoism. It's all so closely related that the uncertainty derived and related to Donald Trump is probably the biggest thing you need to be worried about in terms of Bitcoin. I'll leave you with this. When one man becomes the market, you better be able to trust that man, right? But hey, I'll leave you with that. Until next time, I'm Justin Banton. This is the House of Trade. Thanks for checking in. Sorry it's been so long. Like, share, and subscribe. See you next time. Bye.